It was supposed to be an exciting time for us, the beginning of the new school year. I could already picture the fresh new clothes, the shiny shoes, and the thrill of fitting in with everyone else. But that morning, everything changed. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my mom, with a deep sigh, looked at me and said, "We can't afford clothes for the kids this year." My heart sank. For a second, I thought I had heard her wrong. Surely she didn't mean it. But the look in her eyes told me everything. She wasn't joking. She wasn't even sad, just tired, like she had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders for too long. I stared at the table, feeling a lump form in my throat. My younger brother and sister had no idea yet. They were still playing in the living room, laughing, completely unaware of the storm brewing around us. How could I tell them? How could I explain to them that the new clothes they were so excited for weren't coming this year? My mom's voice broke through my thoughts. "I'm doing my best," she said softly, as if reading my mind. "But with everything going on, it's just not possible. I'm sorry." I could see how hard it was for her to even say those words. I knew she tried everything, working extra hours, stretching every dollar, and still it wasn't enough. But there had to be a way. There had to be something I could do. I couldn't just sit back and let this be our reality. I wasn't going to accept that this was how things would be. Little did I know, this moment would mark the beginning of something unexpected. It wasn't the end of the story. It was only the start. The days after my mom's words hung over us like a cloud. I could feel the weight of it every time I walked through the door. The house, usually filled with the sound of laughter, felt strangely quiet. My brother and sister still didn't understand the seriousness of the situation, but I could see the worry on my mom's face each time she looked at them. She tried her best to hide it, but I could tell. I spent the next few days and a daze thinking about what we could do. I couldn't stop imagining my younger siblings going to school in old, worn-out clothes, feeling embarrassed and out of place. They were so excited for new outfits, like all the other kids. How could I take that hope away from them? One evening, I found myself sitting alone on the old couch, staring out the window. My mom had gone out to work a second job, and I had a few quiet hours to think. It wasn't the first time we'd struggled. There had been other years when money was tight, but we always found a way. A new pair of shoes from a sale, a hand-me-down jacket from an aunt, little things that made a big difference. But this felt different. The weight of it all felt heavier. My mom was exhausted, and I could see how hard she was trying. But the world seemed to be against her. There were bills piling up, groceries that had to be stretched further, and now the clothes. Those were the last straw. I knew how much she hated seeing us suffer. It hurt me to see her struggle like this. She would work late into the night, and I would lie awake, trying to think of something, anything I could do to help. But what could I do? I wasn't old enough to get a full-time job. I couldn't fix our financial situation with just a few dollars. I kept hearing her voice in my head. I'm doing my best. But her best didn't feel like enough. I wanted to do something for her. I wanted to take away the worry lines on her face, the stress in her eyes. I wanted to show her that things didn't have to be this way. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to act. I couldn't just let it be. But how? How could I make a difference when everything seemed out of reach? The next day, I sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook. I started to write down ideas. The first thought that came to mind was to ask my aunt or uncle for some old clothes. Maybe they had things they no longer used. But I quickly dismissed it. It wasn't that I was too proud to ask for help. It just felt like giving up. I wasn't ready to admit we needed charity. I then thought about what I could do with the clothes we already had. Maybe I could fix them up, make them look new. My mom had taught me a little bit about sewing when I was younger, but I wasn't sure if I could make old clothes look fresh again. Still, I had to try. The next few days, I started going through all the clothes we already had. The worn shirts, the faded jeans, and the dresses that had seen better days. I took each piece of clothing and tried my best to patch up the holes, fix the buttons, and add little details to make them look new again. It wasn't perfect, but I was determined to make it work. But as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness. Even if I fixed everything up, would it be enough? Would my mom be proud? Would the kids? even feel happy with what we had. I wanted to give them everything. I wanted them to feel special, to know that even though we didn't have much, we could still make it work. But I knew I was only one person, and the burden felt too big for me to carry alone. The days blurred together as I worked on the clothes. My fingers were sore from stitching, and my mind was filled with the constant worry of whether it would be enough. I tried to fix old jeans into something that could pass for new, but no matter what I did, it felt like something was missing. The clothes were just clothes. They didn't have the magic I was hoping for. Then, one afternoon, as I was sitting on the floor of my room, surrounded by fabric scraps and buttons, I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened it cautiously, half expecting a neighbor or someone from the neighborhood asking for help. To my surprise, it was Mrs. Jensen, a woman from the church down the street. She was older, in her late 60s, but always had a kind word to say to everyone. I'd seen her around, but we hadn't spoken much. She smiled at me, holding a large bag in her hands. "Hello, dear," she said, her voice gentle. "I know times have been tough for you lately. I thought you might need these." I looked at the bag, confused at first, but then it hit me. She was offering us clothes. Not just any clothes, but beautiful, gently used ones. There were jackets, shirts, dresses, and even shoes, things I had seen at church or in the local thrift stores, but never imagined we could afford. "I hope these help," she said softly, handing me the bag. I figured someone might be able to make use of them. At that moment, I realized something. I didn't have to do this alone. I didn't have to bear the entire weight of solving everything by myself. It wasn't just about fixing up old clothes or finding a way to make everything look new. It was about community. It was about people coming together to support one another when times were tough. "Thank you, Mrs. Jensen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This means more than you know." As she left, I stood there holding the bag, feeling a rush of emotions. There was relief, of course, but there was something else, too, something deeper. I realized I'd been so focused on doing everything myself, on trying to fix the problem with my own hands, that I had forgotten the most important thing. We weren't alone. The clothes weren't just clothes anymore. They represented something more. They were a reminder that we didn't have to carry our burdens in isolation. People cared. They noticed when you were struggling, even when you thought no one was watching. They were ready to help in ways you couldn't even imagine. I rushed home to show my mom. When she saw the bag, her face lit up with disbelief. She had never expected such kindness. It was like a small miracle, a gift from someone who had no reason to help us except for the fact that she knew we were in need. That night, as we sorted through the clothes, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just the clothes themselves, but the message behind them. We didn't have to do everything on our own. We could ask for help, and sometimes people would answer in ways we never expected. My mom looked at me, and for the first time in days, there was a genuine smile on her face. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You didn't give up. You kept trying." I smiled back, feeling a sense of pride I hadn't expected. I hadn't fixed everything. I hadn't solved the problem on my own. But I had realized something even more important. Together, we could make it through anything. As the days passed, the pile of clothes Mrs. Jensen had given us grew into something more than just a stack of fabric. It became a symbol of hope, of unexpected kindness, and most importantly, a reminder that we weren't as alone as we thought. The clothes were a mix of gently used items, but to us, they might as well have been brand new. They were a gift, not just from Mrs. Jensen, but from a community that cared. That evening, I decided to gather my younger siblings to go through the clothes. We sat together in the living room, spreading out the items across the floor. My brother's eyes widened when he saw the little jacket he had been wishing for. Just the right color, just the right fit. He picked it up, grinning ear to ear. "This is perfect," he said, holding it up like it was the best treasure he'd ever found. My sister squealed with excitement as she pulled out a sparkly dress, something she had always wanted to wear to a school party. For the first time in days, I saw pure joy on their faces. It was the kind of joy that reminded me how simple things could still bring happiness, no matter the situation. The clothes weren't perfect, and some of them weren't exactly what they dreamed of, but it didn't matter. They felt special. And that was all that mattered. As I watched my siblings play with the new clothes, I realized something important. This was a turning point. It wasn't the clothes themselves that mattered. It was what they represented. They represented the idea that, even in our most difficult times, we could still find joy. They reminded me that material things could never replace the love and care we had for each other. My family was strong, no matter what we wore. The next day, I took the remaining clothes and began to fix up a few of the older ones. My mom had taught me how to sew and repair things when I was younger, but this time, it wasn't just about patching up old fabric. It was about making something beautiful out of what we already had. I added new buttons, fixed the hems, and even tried a little embroidery on some shirts to make them feel fresh. When my mom saw what I was doing, her eyes filled with pride. "You've really outdone yourself," she said, running a hand over one of the repaired shirts. I didn't think we'd get to this point. But we had. We had reached a place where it wasn't about how much money we had or how many new clothes we could buy. It was about what we did with what we had. It was about how we cared for each other and worked together, even when it felt impossible. The turning point came when my mom sat down beside me, her face soft with relief. "You know," she said quietly, "this wasn't just about clothes. It was about never giving up, no matter how hard things get. I've been so worried, but seeing you step up like this, it makes me realize we can handle anything." Her words stuck with me. It wasn't about how we looked or what we wore. It was about the strength we had as a family. We could make it through anything, as long as we had each other. By the time school started, we weren't wearing brand new clothes, but we were wearing something far more important, a sense of pride. We had made it work. We had turned a difficult situation into an opportunity to show love, creativity, and strength, and that made all the difference. When my younger siblings walked into school on the first day, they wore their new-to-them clothes with heads held high. They didn't feel out of place. They didn't feel ashamed. They felt proud. And that was the moment I knew we had overcome more than just a lack of clothes. We had overcome our fear of not being enough. And in the process, we had learned that we were always enough, just the way we were. Looking back, I realized that the lesson wasn't about clothes at all. It wasn't about the lack of money or the difficulty of making ends meet. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't fully understood until that moment. The day my mom said we couldn't afford clothes, I thought it was the end of the world. I thought our happiness and sense of worth were tied to things we didn't have. But what I learned over the next few weeks changed everything. We didn't need new clothes to be happy. We didn't need to keep up with others or impress anyone with what we wore. What mattered was that we had each other. What mattered was the way we pulled together as a family, the way we made the most of what we had, and the way we kept going despite the obstacles. When we started fixing up old clothes, I didn't realize at first how much those small efforts would change us. Each stitch, each repair, each small act of creativity felt like a step towards something bigger than just a solution. It felt like we were rebuilding not just our wardrobe, but our sense of hope and strength. And then, when Mrs. Jensen stepped in with her unexpected kindness, it was like the universe was reminding us that we weren't alone. People cared. Our community cared. We didn't end up with everything we thought we wanted, but we ended up with exactly what we needed. And in a way, that was far more valuable than anything money could buy. We didn't just survive that year, we thrived. Not because of the clothes we wore, but because of the love we shared and the way we supported each other through it all. My siblings went to school feeling proud, even without new outfits. And I realized that what I thought was a setback was actually an opportunity. It was an opportunity to teach them something far more important than how to shop or how to dress. It was an opportunity to show them how to face challenges with grace and creativity, how to find joy in what we already have, and how to lean on others when we need help. By the time the school year came to an end, we weren't just stronger as individuals. We were stronger as a family. We had learned that we didn't need to have everything to be happy. We didn't need to have it all to feel enough. We were already enough, just the way we were. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that the most important things in life, love, hope, and resilience, were never something we could buy. So When I look back at that time, I don't think about the clothes we couldn't afford. I think about the lessons we learned, the strength we discovered, and the way we came together as a family. And that, I now know, is worth far more than anything money could ever buy.